Good morning. Last week we returned to our series on Character Still Counts, and we began to discuss the character trait of perseverance. Anybody remember anything from last week? All righty. Makes you feel worthwhile. Yeah.
It's not too prevalent in our society today.
Yeah, that's true. I'm glad you got that. Last week we looked at several modern day examples of people who persevered, and as a result of their perseverance, they became very successful. We looked at a couple that missed out big time because they weren't perseverant. You remember any of those folks?
People with Steve Jobs.
Yeah, Ronald Wayne was the third partner in Apple Corporation when it started. He had 10 shares. He lasted 12 days, sold it for $800. That would now be worth billions of dollars had he persevered. Yeah. Anybody else you remember? Okay, let's go to the book of Job. He's without a doubt one of the most perseverant men in all the scripture. He's identified as a man bearing great patience, and I guess if you define patience as perseverance, then I would agree with that. So we're going to start in chapter 1. It says, "In the land of Uz there lived a man whose name was Job. This man was blameless and upright. He feared God and shunned evil." What's that tell us about him right away? Good man. Very spiritual man. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters. He owned 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camels, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 donkeys. And he had a large number of servants. What's that tell us about him? He was a good man, and he was very rich, very wealthy. He was the greatest man among all the people of the earth. His sons used to take turns holding feasts in their homes, and they would invite their 3 sisters to eat and drink with them. When a period of feasting had run its course, Job would send and have them purified. Early in the morning, he would sacrifice a burnt offering for each of them, thinking, "Perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts." This was Job's regular custom. What's that tell you about him? He was a good man. He was a wealthy man. He was a faithful man. He was, he loved his kids and very concerned about their spirituality. One day the angels came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with them. Now, why in the world would Satan come with the angels to have a powwow with the Lord?
He was an angel, and he was evidently able and capable of traveling all through heaven and earth, and had a reason to go there to cause trouble.
Yeah. Satan was an angel. What was his name when he was an angel? Lucifer. Okay. So God gathered the angels together, and Satan said, I'm an angel. Not a very good one, but I'm going to join the party and see what's going on. Satan answered the Lord, or the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Maybe a little surprised that he was there. And his answer was,
Going to and fro.
Yeah, going to and fro, back and forth in the earth. Now, he didn't tell the whole story, okay? He's a liar. He wasn't just going to and fro, back and forth around the earth. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be self-controlled and alert. Your enemy, the devil, Satan, Lucifer, prowls around." He wasn't just moseying around. Prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. So because he's doing that, what does Peter tell us to do?
Watch out.
Yeah, be self-controlled and be alert. Be alert. You know, I think sometimes we're not the most spiritually alert folks. Okay? I remember when I took my course for a handgun license. I can't remember this specifically, but the guy was talking about how important it is to always be alert. And he walked through 2 or 3 different, maybe Marty remembers, colors. And he said, you know, you should always be on yellow at least. And that means, you know, when you get out, like if you're going to Walmart, you know, most of us go to Walmart and the first thing we're thinking about is, gee, I wonder what kind of goofy people I can see in here today. And he says, you know, when you're walking, you know, be aware of your surroundings. Be aware of your surroundings. And then there was a red, and but the bottom line he was saying is, in this world that we live in now, you need to be alert. In this spiritual world, we need to be alert. Because Satan, who, when God said, what have you been up to? Oh, I just been walking around the earth. No, he's prowling around like a roaring lion, and he wants to devour you. And he wants to devour me spiritually. So don't just lackadaisical is the word I'm looking for. Don't just walk around, you know, no big deal. Be aware, because he's constantly on the lookout to devour you.
I just read a statement about somebody who was a very successful person in the mid-1800s in America, and what it said about the man was, he said he had the presence of mind and the energy to accomplish great things, and it took, you had to, you know, Job had to be that way.
Yeah.
He not only was he was watching out, he's watching out for his kids, that's part of the story here. But he had the presence of mind to know all the things that were going on, or he would have never accomplished the things that he did. It wasn't just because he was lucky.
Yeah, that's right.
And so that goes to, you know, just follows up exactly what you say. And in this life, for us too, I mean, man, more to be alert a little bit. See some things that are coming if you don't watch out.
Yeah, you're not going to be spiritually strong and spiritually healthy if you're not alert.
Amen.
You're just not going to be. And he says, be self-controlled and alert. Okay? Don't be impulsive. Don't live your life impulsively. Be self-controlled. Well, why do that, Peter? He says, because he's looking for someone to devour. Resist him. Okay? That's action. That's action. And James talks about how to resist him. We'll look at that another time. Resist him, standing firm in your faith. And that's what perseverance is about. Standing firm in your faith, not being wishy-washy in it. Be strong. And the God of all grace, verse 10, who called you to this eternal glory in Christ, after you have suffered a little while, will himself restore you and make you strong, firm, and steadfast. Okay? Are we going to suffer in this life? Yeah, we are. Okay? And after we stand firm in that, what are we going to develop? We're going to be strong, we're going to be firm, and we're going to be steadfast. That's perseverance. Let's go back to Job.
Hey, Mike?
Yeah.
Just dawned on me about that resisting strong. We can't get physically strong without resistance. That weight training and running and all that stuff that's suffering.
Yeah, it is.
You know? If everything was, we never did anything that was pushing against us, then we're weak and we get lazy,
Yeah.
fat. And I think,
Fat.
well, I speak.
Who talking about?
Well, I think that, so then when we're up against suffering or trouble or stuff, we look at that like, oh, why me? But it's doing us a favor sometimes.
Sure, yeah.
It's the only
Yeah.
way we can be strong.
Yeah. I did something to my knee 6 or 8 weeks ago, and I've been doing some physical therapy. And due to some other, I've been going once a week, and due to some other things coming up, and I skipped a couple of weeks, and I went to physical therapy Friday, and man, they worked me over. Okay, did a bunch of stretches, I got up Saturday morning, and my legs were aching all over the place. Well, why is that? Well, because I haven't been paying attention to them, and they caused me to do some things that were a struggle, that developed some resistance, and there was pain. go back to Job. Okay, what are you doing, Satan? Have you considered, then the Lord said to Satan, and boy, I don't know if God ever says this to Satan about me. I hope he doesn't. You know, if I could pray, hey God, you can leave that statement out as far as my life's concerned. He said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? Have you considered my servant Job? There's no one on earth like him. He is blameless. He is upright. He is a man who fears God and shuns evil. And he's demonstrated that already in what he said before. Satan says, okay, does Job fear God for nothing? Have you not put a hedge around him? Yes, he had. And I want God to put a hedge around me. Indeed. And his household and everything he has. I pray frequently for myself and for my family and the people that I love. Put a hedge of protection around us. Put a hedge of protection around my grandkids so that they don't deal with temptation and struggles that they're not prepared to deal with in their life yet. And I want a hedge around me. He said, yeah, you've done that. You've blessed the work of his hands so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. He said, yeah, this guy is great, but it's only because you protect him. You put a hedge around him. You bless his life. That's the reason. It says in verse 11, but stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. He said, hey, God, the only reason he's this upright, perfect, fearless man is because you protect him. Let me mess with him a little bit. Let me test him. Let me see if his faith is everything that it appears to be. The Lord said to Satan, very well. Then everything he has is in your hands, but on the man himself do not lay a finger. Okay, Satan, here's your parameters. You can touch anything he has, but don't touch him. The Lord said to Satan, very well. I already read that. Then Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Verses 13 through 19, I'm going to let you read on your own. What it tells is what happened after Satan was free to do whatever he wanted to do to Job. Wow. He lost everything. He was sitting at home, and servant after servant after servant after servant came to him and shared disaster. Everything he owned was ruined. And the final step was there was a big storm that collapsed the house where his kids were celebrating, and they were all killed. They were all killed. Imagine that. Losing everything that means anything to you. At this, verse 20, Job got up and tore his robe and shaved his head. Those are acts of repentance. Then he fell to the ground in worship. Not the typical response to someone who loses everything that they've had. Generally, it's, God, what are you doing? Why did you let this happen to me? Why aren't you protecting me? Have you abandoned me? No. Job said, I'm still going to worship the God that I love, that protects me. Strong man of faith. And he said, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised. In all of this, Job did not sin by charging God with wrongdoing. Great lesson there. Indeed. When life gets difficult, when God leaves a gap in the hedge, and he allows Satan to come in, and when he's prowling around, he allows him to attack us. Don't give up on God. Don't blame God. Don't curse God. Chapter 2. On another day, the angels came to present themselves before the Lord. And Satan showed up again. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" Same answer, to and fro. 1 Peter 5:8, prowling around, seeking which Christians he can devour. Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job?" Job might have thought, "Hey, man, I don't need considered anymore." But he was not so much saying, "Have you considered my servant Job?" as he was saying, "Have you considered the faith and the perseverance of Job? I allowed you into his life, and you took everything away from him. And what did he do? What did he do, Satan? He worshipped me. He didn't curse me. He worshipped me." You know, it's easy to worship God when life's great, when everything's terrific, when we're blessed and there's no struggles. That's no real test. The test is when the going gets difficult. Do we have the ability to persevere and continue to worship? Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There's no one on earth like him. He is blameless, upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil. And he still maintains his integrity, though you incited me against him to ruin him without any reason." God's almost apologetic for letting happen what happened. But he said, in spite of that, he's still who he was. Satan replied, Satan never gives up. Satan's a nasty dude. "Skin for skin," Satan replied. "A man will give all he has for his own life, but stretch out your hand and strike his flesh and bones, and he will surely cause you or curse you to your face." The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, he's in your hands. You can do anything physically to him that you want to do. Just don't take his life." God had a lot of faith in the faith and perseverance of Job.
Yes, he did.
And he was wanting to prove to Satan, there's a man that walks the face of the earth that you're not going to win over. No matter what you do, he's going to be faithful. He's going to persevere. He's going to be true to God. And I want to say to you this morning, if you can't miss everything else, wake up and catch this, and then you can go back to your nap, okay? Don't ever think about quitting. Don't ever let that thought even come into your mind. When it comes into your mind, and it'll come, practice 2 Corinthians 10:5 that says, take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. So when Satan comes along and gets into your life and messes and tests your faith, be determined that I don't care what he does, I'm not quitting. I'm not quitting. I'm going to finish this race. I may finish it crawling over the finish line, but I'm going to finish it no matter what happens. The Lord said to Satan, "Very well then, he's in your hands, but you must spare his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord and afflicted Job with painful sores from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Then Job took a piece of broken pottery and scraped himself with it as he sat among the ashes. I don't know if you've ever had an open sore of any kind. Extremely painful. Extremely painful. He had them from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. Can you imagine that agony? They didn't have oxycodone and stuff like that back then. He didn't have anything to deal with his pain. So he went to the ashes, and if you study that, he went to the city dump and found a piece of pottery and sat there and scraped the sores. None of us have ever been there. None of us have ever been there. His wife said to him, bless her soul. She walked over to the garbage dump where he's scratching the sores. Says, you still holding on to your integrity? What's the matter with you, man? Curse God and die. What an encourager! going through a horrible time in life. He's lost everything he has. She did too. What was her response? Let's just curse God and die. He's still hanging on to his integrity. He replied, he's a brave man. You're talking like a foolish woman. You're talking like a foolish woman.
He figured what else could happen.
Yeah. Better not go there.
Yeah.
Shall we accept good from God and not trouble? Should we accept good from God and not trouble? Listen, God is going to allow trouble into our lives. Why would he do that? Well, we're going to look at a couple of scriptures here in a minute that will tell us why. But it's to develop the quality of perseverance. Because he knows if perseverance is not developed in our spiritual life, get this, if perseverance is not developed in our spiritual life, Satan will wear us down. You've seen it. You could name hundreds of people who used to be fully committed to God, who aren't anymore. How come?
They give up.
They were worn down. They gave up. They weren't able to persevere. When Job's three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Shuhite, they needed to work on names back then, heard about all the troubles that had come upon him, they set out from their homes and met together by agreement to go and sympathize with him and comfort him. News got around that Job was having a rough time. Three of his friends said, let's go sympathize and comfort. When they saw him from a distance, they could hardly recognize him. I've seen a few people. I remember walking into the ICU when Brian had his open heart surgery, and it was hard to recognize him. It just didn't look like him because of the physical difficulty and struggle he had gone through. Unrecognizable. When they saw him from a distance, they began to weep out loud. They saw the suffering of their dear friend. And they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads. Then they sat on the ground with him for 7 days and 7 nights, and nobody said a word, because they saw how great his suffering was. I've been there a few times where I've seen people suffering so much that, they don't want to talk, and you don't want to talk. You just want to sit in quiet.
Sometimes the greatest gift you can give to somebody is just to be there when they're suffering.
That's right. So, we're going to look some more at Job's story maybe next week. But I want you to turn to 1 Peter chapter 1. Just got a couple minutes left. The book of 1 Peter is written to Christians, and in the first couple verses it tells where all of them were from. But they were going through a great persecution. They were suffering severely at the hands of Nero, who was the Caesar of Rome at the time. And he wanted to destroy Christianity. They were suffering great persecution. In the first 5 verses, he talks about all the good things that these people needed reminded of about their faith. Then he says in verse 6, in this you greatly rejoice, what I've just told you about. Though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. These have come. Why do you let trials come into our life, God? Now make this applicable. Don't just listen to what I'm saying. Make it applicable and think, God, why do you let trials come into my life? Because we've all had them. And I think we've all had that question. Why? Well, here's why. These have come so that your faith, of greater worth than gold. There's nothing more valuable in this world than our faith. May be proved genuine. Let me back up. Of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may be proved genuine and may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Now, what's that look like? You know, Jesus is coming back one of these days, and when he comes back, this is my picture. One of the things he's going to be able to do is gather Satan and say, hey, remember all that nasty stuff you did to people? Remember all the grief you brought into Marty Miller's life? He's going to be able to say, here he is. He's persevered. He's mine. You didn't get him. You're a sissy. And that's the case with all of us. And we're going to be praising God because we've persevered through the trial. Turn to Romans chapter 5 and we'll stop. Middle of verse 3. Rejoice in your sufferings. Job's wife's advice was, don't hang on to your integrity. Don't hold on to your character. Just curse God and die because life is getting difficult. That's what her advice was. Paul's advice, God's advice to us, is rejoice in our sufferings. Rejoice. Because we know that suffering produces perseverance. With no suffering, there's no perseverance. Perseverance leads to character. Think we could use a little character in our life, in our world? I'd tell you about my experience at Wendy's yesterday, but I don't have time. But it's a good story. Maybe we'll do that another time. We know that suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope.
Amen.
And that hope is not, I hope I go to heaven. It's the assurance that that's where I'm going. So you see the progression? I've got to have sufferings in my life so I'll be strong enough to persevere. As Stan said a little bit earlier, if there's never any struggle, we don't get any stronger. There's a lady on TV sometime this week, I can't remember if it was a commercial or whatever, but she was talking about all of her athletic feats, how she took those vitamins in the green and the red bottle. You know what I mean? Okay. Yeah, she talked about all the things that she had done, and she talked about a race that she had completed that was 140 miles. Can you imagine that? Yeah. About you're old. But sufferings, do you suppose she ever suffered in her training? Yeah. Why'd she do that? Because I want to finish that. I want to finish that triathlon. I want to finish that race. And you ever watch people who have trained, and then they successfully complete it, and the rejoicing and excitement when they cross the finish line? That won't measure doodly squat. That's a West Virginian word. That won't measure doodly squat in comparison to when I cross the finish line to eternity. So this life gets tough. God allows troubles in our life so we'll develop perseverance. You know, the kids that grow up that are never challenged, that never have any suffering, you parents that well, this is a touchy subject, I understand. But you run off Somebody just woke up back there. But you protect them from every struggle and every difficulty. Man, are you doing them a disservice?
Amen.
You're doing them a disservice. Because they will never develop perseverance that way. They will never develop character. And character leads to hope. Is your hand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before it, he says that we have peace and grace
Mhm.
and hope.
Yeah.
Before he says that suffering produces perseverance, because without peace and hope and grace on those things, a lot of times suffering comes and perseverance doesn't happen because you don't know what you're trying to persevere for.
Yeah.
And we see people, because it's always going to come, right?
Right.
Suffering is going to come, and it doesn't always produce perseverance, because,
Mhm.
unless you actually persevere.
And you have to persevere understanding that those things are in your life, and you want those things to stay in your life. So the thought this morning is this. Job was a tremendous example of perseverance. If you want to, no matter how old you are or how young you are, if your intention is to cross the finish line, and hear, see God as you cross the finish line, and you want to hear him say, "Great job. Well done." And boy, I want that more than anything in this whole wide world. Well done. Well, then when it going gets tough, don't be the third guy that started Apple. Don't be that guy. Be the person who perseveres. That no matter what comes, God promises he'll give us everything we need to handle it. So the next time you're struggling and you're feeling discouraged, in Hebrews chapter 12, verse 3, the Bible talks about persevering in the race so you don't grow weary and lose heart. The next time you're struggling with, I don't know if I can keep this up, don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. And persevere. And we're going to, in the next few weeks, talk about how you make sure you do that so that you hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." You don't have to be the best runner in the race. You don't have to finish first. You don't have to be better than everybody else.
There is no first.
Yeah, it's everybody. Everybody gets a trophy. That's the only time I think that's a good idea. Okay?